What is the best race position for optimal speed and comfort? Is comfort more important than being aero? How do you find the optimal position for your body geometry? Right now, I'd be lying if I said that I knew, but we are both on this journey together, and by the end of this video, you'll know the answer to them all, and so will I. Well, I'm not promising miracles, but you can learn from my mistakes and the 6 steps we're about to take to find the perfect race fit. I think this means I might have to start racing. Now, a big thank you to Romain for letting me record and share his knowledge essentially. Go and check him out and give him a follow. Current position. Now, this bike has literally just been built, and I'd like to tell you that I've transferred all of the vital measurements from my other bike, which has a perfect fit, but I haven't. Now, I must admit, when sitting on this race bike for the first time, it was much more comfortable than I thought. I thought I'd be arse over tit, basically feel like I'm about to do a roly-poly. This is mainly because of the large drop. The drop is a difference in height from the top point on the saddle to the midpoint on the bars. Now, looking at the bars, I had originally thought they were 38 centimeters wide on the hoods, but actually the measurements given on the site was actually for the drops. So on the hoods, they're actually 37 centimeters wide, or should I say narrow. I've either made a fatal error with these bars or I've judged it perfectly. We'll soon find out. The frame that I'm using is the Els4Laf Pro 2022 version in a size large, which is a 52. Now, all other measurements were eyeballed, and to be honest, it didn't feel too bad in the current position. Famous last words. But let's head to Swindon, where Romain is based, and he can be the true judge. Point number 1, bike setup and measurements. So before I graced the saddle, Romain spent some one-on-one time with the bike, taking all the measurements. This gives us exact measurements to check at the end of the bike fit, which will show us what needs to be changed. A laser level is used to get the bike level. Some things that Romain noticed straight away was the saddle angle. It was tilting -2 degrees from front to back. Hands up if you've ever got your spirit level out and checked if your saddle is actually flat. Yeah, me neither. The stem is also -10 degrees, but I learned something here. The stem angle is relative to the head tube angle. This angle on the head tube actually counters the angle on the bar and stem combo to create a bar that is actually relatively level. And you get all of this info when you finish your bike fit in a perfectly formatted PDF that you can cherish forever, print out and put on your mantelpiece. It's worth noting that these cranks are 170 millimeters. I've been riding 172.5 cranks on my other bike for years now, so let's see how that impacts everything. Point 2, questionnaire. At this point, Romain would normally carry out a questionnaire, but as I've been through this process before, Romain knew all about my life story, so I wasn't about to bore him for a second time round.
It's a combination of height, leg lengths, flexibility, comfort on the bike, goals on the bike. What are we fitting you to? Are you going to be doing crit racing, or are you going to be doing sporties, or are you just going to the calf with your mates? That's what will decide the position that you're going to be riding in.
As I've never ridden this bike before, I've never had any issues. It's actually really nice to know we are starting from scratch, and as soon as I accelerate off into the abyss for the first time, I'll enter the abyss in the correct position. Current position analysis. Now, can I touch my toes with my legs straight is the question of the day. If I am warm and feeling adventurous, then the answer is maybe. This was one of the things that Romain looked at in the off-bike screening that took place before I went anywhere near the bike. The reality is, you as a human may have limitations. Let's be honest, most of us do, unless you stretch once a day, eat like a saint, and have never had an injury whatsoever in your life.
My body is a temple.
Now, these limitations should be explored and considered. If you are as rigid as a plank, then some adjustments may have to be made. Once I slung my leg over and my feet graced the pedals, Romain then observed and looked at my initial position. It's like David Attenborough observing a creature in the wild, only I'm not a majestic cheetah, I'm more like a wounded buffalo. On the bike, it wasn't a disaster. In fact, my arms looked in an okay position with a natural bend at the elbow. They aren't locked out, and equally, they don't have a huge bend. My shoulders also appeared to be okay-ish. They weren't rotating forward, causing me to lose my neck, and they weren't forced backwards with my shoulder blades coming together. Now, the bike definitely feels racy, for want of a better word. I am clearly in an aggressive position, but not uncomfortably aggressive. The saddle height doesn't feel too bad either, but certainly feels like there could be more refinement, but I don't feel like I'm sitting on a giraffe's head. Shoes and cleats. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about the cleats because I have a whole video on foot position. Essentially, the cleats were installed as far back towards the center of the foot as possible on the shoe. Then I hopped on the bike and we adjusted the angle accordingly to ensure the best cleat position possible for no pain, best power transfer, all of those good things. Now, it took some adjusting, but we got it spot on. On on to the adjustment that you all love, the saddle height. Now from my experience, this single-handedly makes the biggest difference to your position on the bike. It's worth noting that sometimes in this session, the watts on the turbo trainer will be set around the 275 mark, which is what it will hopefully be when I'm riding this bike properly. It's important to ride at the watts you will be holding on the bike so that the bike fit is relevant to your scenario. However, for the saddle height, it's not as important because your correct saddle height is your correct saddle height regardless of the power you are producing. Before we adjust the saddle height, I need to explain proprioception and muscle memory because it plays a huge role in this adjustment. Now, proprioception is your body's ability to sense movement, action and location. What happens is your body has an idea of what feels correct and you can judge it without actually seeing or knowing. And when you think you know what is correct, you can then determine when something feels wrong. The issue with the saddle height is if, like me, you have ridden for many years on an incorrect saddle height that's too high, not on this bike, my other bike, then you will feel like an incorrect saddle height is actually correct. And what Romain is about to do helps you remove that proprioception. So we are going to take the seat down in increments and then all the way up in increments. Each time I'll pedal and really feel what it's like, what is actually happening and how my body is adapting. We also have Romain check in the visual cues as well, and the cadence from the turbo trainer is also a good indicator of the change. So we took the seat all the way down. When the saddle was too low, my cadence had decreased. I also felt like I wasn't finishing the stroke, like I had more to give, more to push at the bottom, and I was too compact to deliver that final part of the pedal stroke.
When you arrive at the bottom, you're not done pushing down.
No. I also had hip impeachment, which is where my knee is coming so high relative to my chest, higher than what I could do if I simply lifted my leg. Then we went to the other end of the spectrum where the seat was too high, and to be honest, this just feels uncomfortable. The seat basically feels like it's fighting my delicate area. My hips are rocking side to side because I need to reach to get to the bottom of each stroke. I feel like one of those one-legged men that you get at a car sales garage, flapping around all over the place, completely unstable. So now we know what the extremes feel like. We have removed the proprioception because I genuinely know what is incorrect. We brought the saddle down incrementally to a place where it felt comfortable, the cadence was at a good place and my pedal stroke was smooth. Romain is constantly looking as well for visual cues. Now for me, there was a correlation between saddle height and cadence. When the saddle is too low, my cadence will drop. As the seat is raised, the cadence increases. It gets to a point where the cadence is fast and smooth. Then as we increase the saddle height, the cadence drops off again and the smoothness decreases. It's interesting because I never thought that saddle height would have such a large impact on cadence, which impacts various other aspects of riding. Now, crank arm length is an interesting one. It's good to determine if you can work with the crank arms that you have on your bike or if they are no-go and you definitely need to change them and invest in a new set. Now, Romain made me do a test to check this. Bear in mind, this check needs to be done after the saddle height has been set correctly and is not going to change. So what I had to do was release one foot from the pedal, my right foot, and rotate the cranks backwards using just my left foot. At the top of the stroke, I had to go super slow, like a snail's pace, and see if I could rotate around the top of the stroke smoothly. If, for example, at the top of the stroke you slow down and then once you are over the top of the stroke you speed up, this shows that you have hip impeachment and your crank arm length could be too long.
One way to check if you need it or not, rather than if it would be better or not, is that reverse test.
I see, so you're testing the end result.
Yeah, so here, if your hip is blocking,
yeah,
there's only two options, well, there's a few options we can do, but it kind of means your crank is too long. Okay. So you don't have enough flexibility in the hip to clear the top of the stroke. Yeah. And that is causing pelvis to...
So your seat's the right height, and then that locks, so then you're like in a stuck situation basically.
Yeah.
For me, both the right and left leg had no issues and I could complete the stroke slowly on both legs.
Well, aren't you clever?
Next on the hit list is reach. When looking at the reach, we are upping the watts to the average of what I'm hopefully going to be hitting on this bike. This was 275 watts. Now, the reason this needs to be set is because as you put more power down, you support your body weight differently, which you'll see shortly. Now, Romain slowly increased the reach, stretching me out like I was on a rack. As the reach increased, I could feel my shoulders rotating forwards. If you observe this from the side, you'll see my neck slowly disappearing because you're overstretched and you're basically hunching forwards. Then we did the opposite and went too short. This has the opposite effect. Your arms are essentially pushed back, which in turn pushes your shoulder blades together. You also have the feeling like you want to push the bars away because they're too close. I love to feel like one with my machine, but I don't want to feel like I'm pushing her away. Here, Romain also spoke about aerodynamics and how the position of your forearm has a big impact. This is because it's a cylinder and it also hits the wind directly as part of your frontal area.
You hear a lot of people, oh, your stem is too high, just drop your stem. You're going to be more aero. Yeah, the thing is people go from that position to that position.
Yeah, they just
where is the aerodynamic here? Yeah. It's actually worse.
So you straighten
cylindrical, like cylinder shapes are the worst.
Cylinder?
Yeah.
Okay.
For aerodynamic. So those cylinders, they're really bad. So if you go from that position to that position, you've actually lost aerodynamic.
Because your arms are straighter and your...
Yeah, and now you're exposing all that way before they were not exposed. So if you go from the hoods to the drops and you're moving, then you're getting a benefit, you're getting more aero. If you go from the hoods to the drop and your head doesn't go down, there is no reason to do it.
We also did the release test where you let go of the bars and see if your body drops. It's important that your trainer is on a fixed wattage here, otherwise you can just increase your watts to support your body. In the end, we settled on a position that was A, comfortable, and B, relatively aero, perfectly balanced. As we have found the perfect reach previously, if we change the bar height now, we need to change the reach accordingly.
That distance here is the same, it's your stem.
Yep.
If you put it up, because it follows the line
of the head tube's backwards, so it all moves backwards.
So it moves back. So as you come up, that comes in.
Okay.
So to keep the same distance, you have to bring it out.
Okay, so if you come up, you have to go out more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To keep the same distance.
Yeah.
But if you come down, then that's pushing it away.
Now with some twists and turns of some screws, Romain worked his magic and we tried various positions. Now I was secretly hoping that the original position, original bar height, wasn't too bad because these integrated bars will be an absolute pain to change. We test the bar height on the drops and on the hoods, and there are some cues that Romain is looking for here. Overall, Romain concluded that raising the bars 5mm would be optimal, but I can get away with them as they are. Sigh of relief.
Bullet dodged.
Onto the shifters. Now these bars only allow the shifters to be just about level. We can't really get them higher because the allowed range is indicated by the rough markings, or at least I think so. The angle of the bars will change the position of your wrist and needs to be considered to make sure it's optimal, and the angle of the shifters will also change your reach. If a huge adjustment is going to be made on your shifters at this point, then don't forget to adjust your reach accordingly. Romain took the final measurements which he provides after the fit. Believe it or not, my position was pretty good from the start, more luck than judgment. Now the saddle height was increased slightly by 5mm. This was optimal position for comfort and cadence. Romain also suggested that I could add 5mm to the stem height to make it optimal, but I can get away with how it is at the moment. Now you have seen and learned about a race fit. Check out this video where I get a bike fit on my endurance road bike. It's very surprising how different the position is on that bike and this bike.